I really love the look of the original hardwood floors in my house, but because they're so beautiful, it makes me nervous that something's going to happen to one of them and I'm going to have to repair it. It might seem like a challenge to repair a small area of hardwood flooring, but today I'm going to break it down for you and show you just how easy it is to patch a hole in your hardwood floors. So here's what we're going to use: a hammer, a pry bar, painter's tape, an oscillating saw with a wood cutting blade, a speed square, a wood chisel, a tape measure, a miter saw, a 2x4, a piece of 1/2-inch plywood, drill driver, some 2-inch wood screws, and if you have one, a 3-inch wood screw, painter's caulk, construction adhesive, a trim nailer, sander, wood stain, polyurethane, and last but not least, matching hardwood floorboards. This situation is a little bit unique in that I have an air register that is no longer connected to my system. So my first step is to remove the old ductwork. I'm using a pry bar and a hammer to quickly knock out this old air register box. And then carefully removing the adjacent shoe molding. Being extra careful actually, because I'll be reusing these pieces later. The next step is removing the old boards, and so you have to assess which ones you want to remove. Unfortunately, the air conditioning guys here couldn't move the register over an inch, so I have to find 5 boards to replace. So my first one, I'm going to go ahead and remove the entire board back to this seam. Then this one I'm going to square off here and just replace that part. And I'll remove this board, and then this will be the longest one I replace all the way back to here. And then I'm going to cut this one somewhere around here and go ahead and give it a seam and just replace that part of it. Painter's tape comes in pretty handy here, protecting the floorboards that you don't want to replace. This is tongue and groove hardwood, so the tongue slips into the groove of the next board. But that means when I'm trying to remove them, I'm going to have to cut the tongue off of any board that I'm removing. So I'm trying to remove as few boards as possible. And this is an oscillating flush cut blade, my tool of choice here for making accurate plunge cuts. Cutting around finished floorboards looks pretty intimidating because a mistake could mean having to replace an additional board. But just take your time and let the blade do the work. Once you've cut through the tongue on each side, pry the board loose and remove it. To seamlessly blend the new floorboards with the old, it's important to stagger the joints. But the exact placement of the joint is really up to you, so I have a little fun with it. And here. With the first couple boards removed, we've now got a little room to work with, so it only gets easier from here. Once all the boards have been taken out, you might have a little excess to clean up. That's when a sharp wood chisel comes in handy. The next step is to gather measurements for each new board to be cut, but in my scenario, this hole needs filling in first. So I'm also measuring for the width and depth of a piece of 1/2-inch plywood. If you're repairing a hole like I am here, here's a trick for you. I created this with a 2x4 that's slightly longer than my opening, a piece of plywood that's the same thickness and width as my opening, and then this is my favorite part. It's a 3-inch screw that's in there, but not all the way. That gives you something to hold on to as you slip it down into the hole. Pull it back up in there, nice and snug, and then you attach it to the 2x4. To completely seal the void, I'm running a bead of painter's caulk around the plywood, and then I'm cutting a garbage bag to fit. Okay, I know it may seem silly to put a garbage bag on my subfloor, but it does serve a purpose. It helps keep the moisture from the ground underneath from coming up into my house and in the future potentially warping my new hardwood boards. So then I'm also going to glue my new boards in place on top of it. I'm going to start next to me and work my way back. I'm going to try and keep the tongue on the boards as much as possible where I can, but I'm also not afraid to cut them off if they get in my way. You don't really want to see nail heads in a finished floor, so construction adhesive is a great alternative. Although I am still tacking in a nail here and there into the ends of the boards where they meet the wall, since these holes will get covered up by the shoe molding. With the boards neatly in place, it's time to prep the hardwood for staying. Start by using a fine grit sandpaper to sand your new board smooth, and be careful not to cross over onto the already finished floor. Don't worry about the gap that I have down here at the end of the boards. The shoe molding that was here at the beginning that I took off, I'm going to put it back after I finish staining. And I went ahead and removed the painter's tape before staining because inevitably there's going to be some scratches along the edges and the stain will soak right in and conceal those. And also, since this is already sealed, if I get stain on it, it'll be able to wipe right off. The longer your stain sets before wiping it off, the deeper the color will appear. So it helps to test out a board first to get the perfect match, either on a scrap piece or the underside of one of your new floorboards. If you're unsure about which color stain to use, I'd suggest bringing one of the removed boards to a home center or paint store. After wiping off any excess, I'm allowing the stain to set overnight before topping it off with a protective polyurethane coating. 2 or 3 coats will provide even more protection. Just remember to lightly sand between each coat. Once the final coat is dry, reinstall your shoe molding and you're done! Now when I walk by, I'm going to have a sense of pride of another home improvement project checked off my to-do list. And if you do this at your house, share it with me. Doesn't turn out as well as mine? Well, that's what rugs are for. Thanks for checking in. I've got so many projects to share with you, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss my next episode.